spike of nearly 84,000 cases in the last 24 hours. India's COVID-19 tally crosses 38.5 lakh. Testing hits a record high of 11.7 lakh. Recoveries also clocked the biggest single-day rise of over 68,500, pushing the recovery rate above 77%. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman goads banks to use the RBI recast window to the extent possible to relieve stress in the economy. Tells banks to submit the list of sectors and companies where they can't recast. The FM also urges banks to lend more to spur demand during the festive season. The Supreme Court directs that accounts which have not been declared an NPA by the 31st of August should not be declared NPAs till further orders. Observes that prima facie relief measures and policies have to follow from the RBI and not be left to the discretion of individual banks. The court will hear the matter again on the 10th of September. The centre continues to bat for borrowing by state governments to meet the GST compensation gap and clarifies further on the option. Sources say states will not borrow directly from the RBI and the centre will provide a letter of comfort to lenders under a special window. The Lal Street ends flat after a choppy but range-bound session. The Sensex, the Nifty end with modest losses as banking counters falter. The mid-cap index gains nearly 1%. The rupee weakens 44 paise to 73.47 to the dollar, a level last seen on the 4th of May. Airtel's upfront payment of 18,500 crore rupees may allow a 3-year moratorium on the staggered payment of AGR dues. Sources say that since this amount constitutes about 41% of the total demand, Airtel may not have to pay the first 3 installments and 8% interest on it. The telecom department is yet to confirm the same. Vodafone Idea soars ahead of the crucial meeting tomorrow where the company's board is scheduled to consider fundraising options. Sources say the board may also take stock of the fibre asset sale plan where Brookfield and KKR are key contenders. The Coast Guard deploys 3 ships and a Dornier aircraft to help the Sri Lankan Navy fight the fire on board an oil tanker chartered by IOC. The New Diamond is carrying close to 2 million barrels of crude oil to IOC's Paradeep refinery. Sri Lanka's Navy says the fire is under control and only one of the ship's 23 crew members has been injured. Army Chief General Manoj Mukund Narwane reaches Ladakh to review the ongoing security situation along the line of actual control. The 2-day visit comes a day after Indian troops consolidated their position by occupying heights along Pangong Tso, even as Chinese troops engaged in fresh provocative action. Twitter confirms that an account of Prime Minister Modi's personal website was hacked after tweets called on followers to donate through cryptocurrency to the National Relief Fund. The microblogging site is investigating the matter. Even as criticism over inaction to curb hate speech mounts, Facebook bans BJP MLA Raja Singh. He will not be able to maintain a presence on Facebook or Instagram. The action comes after the Wall Street Journal claimed that Facebook's top public policy executives in India shielded Singh from a ban when he allegedly called for violence against minorities. The Trump administration asked states to be ready to distribute the coronavirus vaccines by the 1st of November, 2 days before the U.S. presidential elections. The Center for Disease Control asked state administrations to consider waiving requirements and expediting applications to operationalize vaccine distribution facilities. Hello and welcome to CNBC TV 18's special edition of Restarting India, where we focus on the planning and policy initiatives needed to take India back to the road to growth. Today, we focus on the government's plan to push ahead with an umbrella policy for the performance-linked incentive schemes as well as a phased manufacturing program. The PLI scheme is likely to cover 9 sectors, including capital goods, white goods, as well as tech products. The phased manufacturing program, or the PMP, will focus on special manufacturing parks and benefits for the MSME sectors, among others. We will also take a look at the government's plans for railway modernization, where it is hoping to bring in PPP investments worth at least 30,000 crore rupees and allow private operators to procure, operate and maintain allocated trains. To find out more about this, as well as the plans to modernize major railway stations and set up dedicated freight corridors, I'm joined by the CEO of NITI Aayog, Amitabh Kant. Mr. Kant, many thanks for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Let me first get from you a sense of the state of the economy. We've just got the GDP print for the first quarter, and it has come in lower than what was expected. It's minus 24%. In hindsight, do you believe that the manner in which the lockdown was implemented, a nationwide overnight lockdown, that has been the cause of this kind of collateral damage, both social as well as economic?
So Shereen, let me tell you this scenario across the world. The pandemic has had an impact globally. If you were to compare it with the 2008 crisis, that had impacted the global economy by 1%. Right now, global economy has already been impacted by over 7.5%. So you've had a 50 times more impact than you ever had during that financial crisis. And to my mind, every single economy of the world has been impacted. The first job of the government at that point of time was to save the lives of individuals. The nature of pandemic was not known, and therefore we had to do a lockdown. We had to stop flights from coming in, as was done by many other countries. We are a large country, and therefore the impact was there. But I'm quite sure that we'll get out of this. We will we had to confront the pandemic, and now that we've opened the economy, I'm quite sure that with all the measures that have been taken, and we will get back to a normal situation.
But how confident are you about getting back to normalcy, Mr. Kant? And I'll ask you this because, as you pointed out, that we're in a phase of unlock. In fact, we've just announced the Unlock 4 guidelines. But at the same time, the infections continue to rise. Today, India recording the highest at over 80,000 of the number of case rise in a single day. So how confident do you feel about this return to normalcy that you speak of?
No, you're very right, Shereen. What I'm talking about normalcy is that people have started now operating their individual manufacturing units. Companies have started working. But the pandemic is very much a challenge before the country. How to manage it unless and until we don't slow down the pandemic. But lockdown is definitely not a solution. The solution lies in physical distancing, it lies in masks, it lies in better contact tracing, but it definitely does not lie in lockdowns. And I think that's something which the states have also gradually understood, that we need to open up the economy and allow normalcy to come back, because the more we do lockdown, the bigger will be the impact in terms of impacting nutrition, livelihoods, women, midday meals. It'll have a huge impact subsequently on health, education. I mean, education, it continues to have a very major impact. So learning outcomes will get impacted.
Yes. Yes, so, health outcomes, learning outcomes have already been impacted. And Mr. Kant, it's very clear in the statements that you make that you're saying that the lockdown cannot be an experiment that we go back to. And yes, it's now very clear, even though we are seeing the curve continue to rise, we are very firmly in unlock. So that is an acknowledgement of what the government makes of the impact of the lockdown. But let me ask you about how we can bring growth back. And let me specifically focus on a few of the measures that the government has announced. There's already been announcements on a production-linked incentive plan for some sectors, for medical devices, for mobile phone manufacturing, as well as for the API and the pharmaceutical sector. We are given to understand that 9 other sectors are likely to see similar schemes. Is it going to be one scheme, an umbrella scheme, or will there be tailor-made schemes for each of these sectors?
So Shereen, we're working on production-linked incentive, and I think these schemes have to be tailored for individual sectors. What has been done for electronics and mobile manufacturing, and which has had incidentally a massive response, cannot be replicated in pharmaceutical and API, it cannot be replicated in textile, and it cannot be replicated in automobile. So every different sector has to have a different PLI. We've examined many sectors. We've shortlisted a few sectors, and we will continue to work with these ministries to take them forward for implementation. But our belief is that India needs to become a competitive nation. This is an opportunity where a lot of reforms must be carried out. We must continue to make India easy and simple. but we must also provide some production-linked incentives in several sectors where we can afford to be a global champion. Identify the sectors, identify the companies, push them for greater investments, push them for production only when they're able to produce to that very high level of ambitious targets, give them incentives and move forward.
So what's the next, Mr. Kant? You said that you've already shortlisted identified sectors that will require customized PLI schemes. What can we expect? When can we expect the next scheme to be announced? Which specific sector are you ready with?
So we have worked around about 15 odd sectors. We've had interaction with secretaries around 15 odd sectors. I think we'll shortlist them to about 9 or 10. You can't have all the sectors where India can become a global champion. I don't think we'll have more than 8 or 9 sectors, but we are working around them, and finally this will be processed. There's some level of interministerial consultation, then it will go to the cabinet for approval, but we are at a fairly advanced stage on this. But that is one bit of it.
Some timeline, you say that you're at a very fairly advanced stage. Are we talking about the next few weeks? And will each of these 8 to 9 PLI schemes go to the cabinet together, or will you take them one by one?
No, they'll go together as one scheme, get approval, and then we'll move individual proposals for them for approval. Because a lot of homework will have to be done by the individual ministries to the cabinet, and then there will be individual proposals which will have to go and get approvals, because each ministry will have to design its scheme in consultation, and I think that work is also at a very, very advanced stage right now.
Okay, Mr. Kant, I just wanted a little more clarity, sir. When you talk about this one umbrella scheme going to the cabinet and then individual schemes being listed out sectorally, what's the outlay for these 8 or 9 sectors that you've identified?
Yeah, so Shereen, let me tell you that the reason for putting it all together in one big basket is that unlike MEIS, which had started small and then ballooned out across about 90% of the items that we were exporting, and did not have a major impact on exports, our objective is that we must be very, very selective, we must be very choosy about the sectors where India can be a global champion. Post-World War II, Japan actually just identified 5 sectors where it could be a global champion. And therefore, our belief is that a lot of homework needs to be done, and we've done that homework. And we are at a fairly clarity of mind we've got now on what are the areas where India can be a sector which would require assistance and support of the government. But this requires formal approval of the government. We've also broadly, despite all the fiscal constraints, arrived at what would be the amount required for this over a period of next 5 to 6 years to support these sectors.
Yeah. So what is that amount, Mr. Kant, that the government has identified, or NITI Aayog has identified over the next 5 to 6 years in terms of government support?
So, Shereen, I think that should wait the formal government approval process, because that note is going to the...
Can I make a guess,
cabinet, get approval,
can I make a guess, Mr. Kant?
What?
My colleague Timsy Jaipuria picks up that it could be about 40,000 crores. Is it in that ballpark? Is it 40,000 crore rupees that the NITI Aayog is working with?
No, you are quite way off the mark.
On the lower side or the higher side?
No, it can be either lower or higher, but your guess is way off the mark.
That's not saying much, sir. So one final question on the PLI before I move to the PMP scheme. So we're given to understand specialty chemicals, capital goods, technology products, white goods, auto and auto components, textiles, food processing, and advanced battery cells. These are the identified sectors. Can you confirm that?
No, I can confirm that your list is not correct. There are some items which are there, but there are many items which you've included which are not correct. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so,
So let us
broadly,
get
broadly
approval of the
where
cabinet.
we've got some. Okay, okay. Okay, let it get approval of the
Yeah.
cabinet. I want
So
to also ask you about the phased
let it get-
manufacturing
and
program, Mr. Kant.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
What is the plan there, and where do things currently stand as far as the PMP is concerned? What's the rationale behind that, and will you marry the PLI with the PMP?
So, phase manufacturing program is broadly based on the infant industry agreement. And, when you look at a large number of commodities which are consumed in India, which we are importing right now, and they are all consumed in India. They are not an input into our exports. They are consumed like furniture, beds, etc., which are all consumed in India. And PMP is based on what actually this Treasury Secretary in America, Alexander Hamilton, had said when he started protecting American industries, and which was later followed by Japan post-World War II and Korea and Southeast Asian countries, that you provide a certain level of duty protection to your industry, but lay down a clear trajectory of downward decline over a period of 5 years, 5 to 6 years, so that your industry becomes globally competitive and is able to penetrate global markets. They are able to build size and scale. They are able to then penetrate global markets. It's not like protectionism that we had in 60s and 70s, which remained in vogue for the next 3 to 4 decades. That's not the objective. Objective is that you provide some protection,
so if I may clarify,
enable them to get technology.
Okay, so
yeah.
What is this some protection, Mr. Kant? You believe that the protection will be needed for a period of 5 years, but what kind of duties are we talking about? What is the quantum of protection that we're speaking of? You mentioned furniture and bedding. Are some of the other sectors that you're looking at, for instance, toys, games, etc.?
So our belief is that there should be a declining trajectory year after year after year after year, and that's why it's called a phased manufacturing program. And never should it increase beyond the WTO bound rates, so that it should not be beyond 30%, 35%, and it should constantly keep declining and this trajectory must be announced well in advance to everybody, so that the industry is aware that it has to become globally competitive. I mean, it's like South Korea, where Hyundai was protected, but after 5 years when they wanted protection, they were not given. They were said, you have now been given adequate protection, you compete in the global market. And that's how they became globally competitive. And that's what our objective is. That everyone must compete in the global markets. And when the Prime Minister talks about make in India for the world, that's what we are saying, that you make in India, but don't look at only the domestic market, but look at the entire world and penetrate global markets. That's the objective.
That's as far as the plan for PMP, that's the phased manufacturing program, and linking that to Make in India is concerned. But let me ask you about the other big project that you're working on, Mr. Kant, and that has to do with the privatization of train routes, 151 trains across 109 pairs of routes. 2 rounds of discussions have already taken place with prospective investors. Where do things currently stand? Has COVID, pun intended, derailed these plans?
No, not at all. This is a long-term perspective. This is a first of its kind initiative in the country, where private entities will source and operate modern technology trains for undertaking passenger business using the Indian railway infrastructure. Under the first phase of the project, we have about 151 trains, which has about 109 OD pairs divided into 12 clusters. We floated the RFQ for bidding. And let me also tell you that these are the most attractive routes across the country. They are based on huge unmet demand as per railway passenger reservation data, where there have been huge waiting lists and where there's ability to run the premium passenger services. And this will allow a private sector investment of beyond 30,000 crores into passenger operations in India.
Yeah.
The concessionaire would be free to charge market-linked fares to passengers. He can add value-added services. He'll have the freedom for deciding class composition and halts, as well as technology and supplier for procurement of rolling stock. And this is really a path-breaking initiative which we have undertaken. And this will take railways to another, it's a major, major paradigm shift to my mind.
Yes. Mr. Kant, if I could just get clarity on the timelines, because the proposed timeline that you were working with was to conclude the bidding process by the end of this financial year. Do you still stick with that plan? And what's been the feedback that's come in your conversations with investors? Have those concerns been taken care of? Have they been addressed? When will this get off the ground, so to speak?
No. Yeah, good idea. Good question. RFQ for the proposed project has been was floated on the 1st of July, and we've had several pre-bid conferences. We'll have another one. We've had an overwhelming participation from domestic and international players. With huge responses come in. The application due date is October 7, 2020. And right after that, we'll float the RFP. Our target is to complete the whole process by December end. And, you know, we've had a lot of feedback from the private sector. We've taken all their inputs into consideration about the timing, about the OD pairs, about where they will start from, say, for instance, Delhi, whether it's the old Delhi station or the Nizamuddin station. You know, our objective has been to make it extremely commercially viable so that the private sector can really do well in this sector. We've almost addressed all their requirements and demands for this. We've done a lot of due diligence based on inputs received from them.
Okay, a lot of due diligence. You said that there's been an overwhelming response. Can you share with me the number, if not the names, where you believe that we are actually going to see them participate through the application process on the back of the feedback that you've received? Global companies?
No, so these are, we've received over about 45 companies at the RFQ stage, and I expect as we go around marketing the scheme, we'll have more than about 40-50 players bidding for it. And we've you know, addressed, since we've now addressed almost all their concerns in this, and the railways have played a very key role. They've really partnered it in a very positive and progressive manner. And therefore, I expect that this will be a huge breakthrough as far as the railways are concerned. And we've also given them some of the very good routes, you know, routes which are very attractive for wealth creation, I mean, if you were to look at Delhi, Mumbai, or Delhi, Calcutta, some very good routes have been given. So very good routes have been given.
So lucrative routes being given there, and I hope that this process will... Yeah, just the timeline, sir. Bids over by the calendar year end or financial year end?
No, our objective is to complete the entire process by December end. The RFQ last date is October 7, and we want to complete by December end. Yeah, we don't want to have slippages on this.
Okay, don't want to have any slippages on this, hoping to conclude by December end. A very quick question, sir, as far as the station redevelopment plan is concerned, if you can very quickly give us an update on where things currently stand there for the New Delhi and Mumbai railway stations.
So, Shereen, we've actually, again, this from an investor's perspective, these projects are, again, very, very path-breaking. They've been packaged as a combination of railway station and commercial residential development projects, which will allow integrated development of that entire region. And a lot of homework has been done under this. You know, and these projects allow expansion of railway stations as iconic projects under the brownfield model with huge existing passenger footfalls. And, you know, we've already floated RFQ for 10 stations. And we've had an overwhelming response in the first 4 stations of Gwalior, Amritsar, Sabarmati, Nagpur. where we've had over 32 applications, and the RFQ for the New Delhi and the Chhatrapati Shivaji terminus Mumbai have been floated just a few days back, now that we've looked at a user's fee component on the railway stations, and we envisage that my personal view is that, again, the way this has been structured with a user fee, with state-of-the-art passenger amenities, with revenue share over the life of the concession, and a prefixed and affordable user fee to be notified by Ministry of Railways, all this will lead to completely new world-class stations, much like the Delhi and the Mumbai airports. You will have even better railway stations in India now, even better than the airports. So that's what I envisage.
Well,
and they've been very well.
That is an aspirational statement, and I hope it is realized, sir. We all hope it's realized. But I wanted to get a sense of the timeline. You said the RFQ has already been floated for the New Delhi as well as the Mumbai railway stations. By when do you hope to complete the process, at least as far as these two marquee railway stations are concerned?
Shereen, for New Delhi and Chhatrapati Shivaji terminus, I would say that we'll have to get a lot of good bidders and we'll give adequate time. So I would say these two stations will have to go on till July, because we would like to market them. These are very, very unique projects. They're being undertaken for the first time in the country. We are also looking at very, very environmentally friendly modes for this development. We've done a lot of homework around this. I'm saying that they'll be better than the airports because of the design component which has gone into this. You will be quite amazed when you see this. And that's why we'll give it adequate time till July. We want really good parties to come in and bid for them.
Okay, good parties to come in and bid. We're out of time, Mr. Kant, but very quickly, let me ask you a question because on the World Bank's decision to suspend its ease of doing business report, and this has been something that you've very closely monitored from the Indian side. You've been part of the proceedings for many years now. The World Bank said that it would get in touch with governments, with authorities where it needed to. Authorities of countries that were most affected by the data irregularities have been informed. Do you have any information from the World Bank on this decision and what the data irregularities were?
No, there was no data irregularity as far as India was concerned. They've not got in touch with us. They've already got in touch with. They've in fact mentioned the countries in their announcement, the 4 or 5 other countries which have been named. But let me just say that we work on making India easy and simple, not for World Bank's sake. We do it for the sake of making our country better and to make our country grow. We work not merely on the World Bank ease of doing business, but we work on, in fact, making our states compete with each other. And therefore, we do our state rankings. And I think we use the World Bank methodology to push for change, but eventually we created a sense of competition amongst our own states. And we are doing it so that India becomes easy and simple, so that Indian states become easy and simple.
Right.
And we are following what the Prime Minister said, make life easy for the citizens of India.
Sure. All right, Mr. Kant, we'll have to leave it there. We're out of time, but we will continue with this conversation. Thanks very much for joining us here on this edition of Restarting India. That's the CEO of NITI Aayog, Amitabh Kant, with a whole host of headlines. We'll take a break. There's a lot more coming up. Don't go anywhere.